It started as a routine surveillance mission in the early months of World War II along the California coast and ended in a mystery that remains unsolved 80 years later. At 6 a.m. on August 16, 1942, the United States Navy blimp L-8 took off from a small airfield on Treasure Island, an artificial island built in San Francisco Bay. On board were two naval officers, Lieutenant Ernest DeWitt Cody and Ensign Charles Ellis Adams. 5 hours later, the L-8 crashed on a suburban street in nearby Daly City, California, scraping rooftops and taking down power lines along the way. Local fire crews rushed to the site and were prepared to rescue the blimp's crew. But they quickly discovered there was no one to save. Both pilots had somehow vanished from their ship. In today's episode, we will look into the mystery of the ghost blimp. In August of 1942, the United States had been at war for a little over 8 months. America was on edge over possible Japanese attacks along the West Coast, so the Navy assembled a fleet of airships, the same way they did along the eastern seaboard to patrol for German U-boats. Most of the airships the Navy relied on for these purposes were blimps. These craft consisted of little more than a gas-filled balloon, called an envelope, with a control car, or gondola, attached underneath. Because of their simplicity, blimps could easily be operated by small crews, and could even stay aloft for hours, even days at a time. Blimps had the perfect operational capabilities for coastal patrols. They could stay in the air for long periods of time, fly slowly and fly at very low altitudes, hover over targets, and operate in conditions of low visibility and low cloud ceilings, all of which were things that the fixed-wing airplanes of the time could not do. The L-8 was a former Goodyear blimp that the tire company had built for promotional purposes. In early 1942, the Navy took it and 4 other L-series blimps and stationed them at Moffett Field in Santa Clara County, California, which already housed several enormous airship hangars. Lieutenant Cody and Ensign Adams were both experienced airship pilots. A third man, machinist's mate James Riley Hill, was briefly on board, but Cody ordered him off just before the L-8 took off from Treasure Island in order to save weight. The first hour and a half of the mission appeared to have been routine and uneventful. Then at 7:50 a.m., the men radioed that they had spotted an oil slick in the water, a possible indication of an enemy submarine. The men reported they were going in to investigate. That was the last time anyone heard from them. When the L-8 failed to report back, the Navy sent out search planes. Fears eased a bit when it was reported that the blimp had touched down on a beach about a mile away. However, bystanders said there was no one on board. Several of them tried to restrain the blimp, but it rose again and began drifting toward Daly City. The blimp crash landed on a suburban street on the outskirts of Daly City. Police and fire department rescue workers found the door to the blimp's control car open, but no signs of any damage. The radio was in good working order, and both men's parachutes were untouched. The blimp was missing one of the anti-submarine depth charges it normally carried, but that soon turned up on a nearby golf course. The mystery only deepened as investigators probed further. The waters off San Francisco that day were busy with fishing boats as well as Navy and Coast Guard ships, so the blimp's movements were observed by a number of people. According to eyewitness accounts, the blimp had dropped 2 smoke flares over the oil slick to mark its location, then rose to a higher altitude. A passing seaplane observed it in flight. A search plane also spotted it at 2,000 feet, twice as high as it normally flew, before it dropped back under the clouds. Meanwhile, on the ground, hundreds of bystanders followed the deflating and increasingly misshapen craft as it drifted through the skies. As is often the case, witnesses gave contradictory accounts. Some claim they saw no one on board the blimp. A woman who was horseback riding in the area said she'd used binoculars to spot not 2, but 3 men aboard. Others reported seeing men parachuting. The Navy continued to search the waters off San Francisco for days. One optimistic theory was that Cody and Adams had been picked up by a ship that hadn't been able to report their rescue yet because it was maintaining radio silence. But no trace of either man was ever found. Numerous theories have emerged as to what may have happened to the 2 men. Were they captured by the Japanese? Had they defected? One theory proposed that they had been murdered by a stowaway. Some suggested they had killed each other in a fight over a woman. Perhaps they had been abducted by aliens. Many experts today subscribe to the more mundane theory that they simply fell out, possibly when one went to repair something outside the craft and lost his footing, followed by the other man attempting to rescue him and falling as well. The Navy favored that explanation too, but admitted it was only a guess. Whichever is the case, the true fate of the L-8 blimp crew is one of the more intriguing mysteries to come from the Second World War. What do you think happened to them? Leave your theories in the comment section below. This concludes today's episode of the Paranormal Report. If you enjoyed today's episode, please give us a thumbs up and consider subscribing to our channel. It is due to your continued viewership and support that we are able to bring you interesting and informative videos like this. The team here at the Paranormal Report really appreciates your support.